Oh my gosh, that's too funny. Hello and welcome back to Lady Jane Books. Hello, it's me. I'm the problem, it's me. But I am so happy to finally do a live after a couple of months. And who better to do my first live back than with Kari from Very Literary Kari? How are you?
I am so good. I'm so happy to be here. It has been way too long,
It
and
has.
we're finally reunited, Jane. I couldn't be happier about it.
It has been way too long, like way. But fun thing, I think, Carrie, this is our very first historical fiction discussion with The Marriage Portrait by
Ooh,
Maggie O'Farrell. I think so. I'd have to look back in the archives, but I think this is our first historical fiction that we did. So,
okay.
isn't that exciting?
That's very exciting. Very exciting. And I'm gonna say you picked a good one. This was fantastic.
This has been on my TBR ever since I heard about it. Just the concept alone sounded really interesting and not something that people like explore too much.
Yeah.
So when I said like, "Hey, will you read this to me?" because I know that you really, really enjoy history, I thought it would be like a great book for us to pick up and discuss together.
And it was.
It was. It was.
Oh,
So
hey,
first,
John. I want to say hey to John because he's in the
oh my
chat and I
gosh,
haven't seen him in a while.
John, how are you?
Good to see ya.
Excuse me. Hi, John. How are you? It's so nice to see you. Thank you for tuning in. Oh goodness. I know. I feel like all my old friends are coming back, which is really nice. It's really, really nice to see everyone. So, what was your like thoughts before you read this? Like, what was your like kind of just impression of what you thought it was going to be about?
I honestly went into it completely blind. I know this book has been literally everywhere, but I have not really, explored any booktube videos on it. And um, yeah, I knew it was historical fiction, and I knew it was probably set in, the Middle Ages or early Renaissance era.
Mm.
But that was about it. I trust Lady Jane, and so when Lady Jane says this is the book we need to read, this is it.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that we did because I d- I knew like the basic ideas that it was like an arranged marriage between a young girl and an older nobleman and how she had to like navigate court and navigate like her political alliances. So that alone intrigued me, but something I wasn't expecting was like the emotional side of this story. I thought this was actually a
Yeah.
very like emotionally tear-jerking read especially at the end. Um so that's something that kind of surprised me about this, that I knew it was supposed to be like historical, but I didn't know it was supposed to be like that dramatic as well. So I'm glad that we read it.
Me too. I mean, you really got a peek into the main character's thoughts, and to be such a young girl,
Yeah.
and I know obviously it's a different time and place, and you know a lot more mature, and obviously she's in an arranged marriage, so she's kind of having to set aside a lot of the childish things, but a lot of her thoughts were pretty deep. And
Yeah.
yeah, the writing was exquisite. I mean,
It really
I
was.
just really enjoyed the writing. I mean, even if the plot, and granted the plot was good and all of that was great, but even if the plot had been kind of lacking, I would have been okay with it because the
Yeah,
writing was so good.
it was. And I think the characterization as well was so great. It went hand in hand with the writing and they played off of each other very well because also that all goes into a really great plot as well. And I know this is historical fiction, so some of it is embellished, shall we say. Um,
Yeah.
but I think that it was a great mix of historical information and kind of this dramatic flair and this kind of like almost like a thriller aspect to it, which I thought was really, really interesting. So I wasn't expecting that, but I really like this, and it made me want to read another one of Maggie O'Farrell's books. So I might have to look in and see if like this writing style continues on to her other work as well.
Yeah.
Mm.
I'll read
So,
it with you.
all right, we'll keep this going, Carrie.
We
So
always do at every one of these live shows. I don't know if you noticed, but like towards the end, or somewhere in the discussion we talk about another book or something we want to read, and we end up reading it together. So
Yeah, it's like a teaser
that's how it
trailer for like
happens.
the next episode or something like that. It's
That's
amazing.
right.
Amazing. So, for those who don't know what the story is about, it's set in Florence, Italy, in the 1550s, and Lucrezia is the daughter of a Grand Duke, and she's higher in the hierarchy, and she in society there. She's a noble woman, um, and she has a very large family. And in the 1550s, there was a lot of like marriage alliances and a lot of political intrigue within that society at the time. And so this story follows this young girl as she's navigating that society and through her growing up as well. So that was basically the backdrop of the story. And what did you think about like her situation? Like, because if I recall correctly, she actually was not meant to be used in this particular alliance. I think her sister originally was Maria, and then
Right.
she finds herself unexpectedly like pushed into this. What did you think of like that dynamic? Do you think that was like a good way to set up the story, or was it like I'm intrigued because that just seems so unexpected.
I thought it was perfect because I feel like it's very reflective of the time. I do think in that particular time, members of the royal family, particularly female members of the royal family, are seen as pawns.
Mm,
And you could easily swap one in and out. It really, it was all about the alliances. And I don't know a ton about you know the history here, but I do know enough that I feel like they picked a good family. The De
mm,
Medici family was super interesting, and you're talking about a family who they're basically the godfathers of the Renaissance.
yeah.
They are the ones, the patrons who pay for and see all of this amazing Renaissance art come to life. And the dome over the cathedral in Florence, that was paid for and sponsored by the Medici family. So they're a family who puts people in the right places. They're going to put family members into high positions in the Catholic Church. We end up with Medici popes, stuff like that. So um, definitely, I feel like her position was realistic in that way, that it's really all about the alliances and these backroom decisions made by
Mm,
her father. The
mm,
only thing that I was like, wow, this is just unreal, um, was how she was treated as a child, because you would assume she's a child of privilege, and
yeah.
yes, she is going to be used as a pawn. And so wouldn't you want to take great care of her and set her up for success?
Yeah,
you know
prepare
I
her a little
yeah,
bit.
I feel like it was a little bit of a Cinderella sort of story going on with
Mm,
her, and she seemed to be lacking in a lot of the courtly training and behavior. And so you're right that when she gets dropped into this, it's really unsettling for her and very surprising, and she doesn't really know what to do. Um, so I
yeah.
felt like that was probably unrealistic, because in my mind, I'm thinking, if you're part of a royal family, all of that is going to be
Yep.
trained and drilled in you to a T. You're
Etiquette
going to know,
classes and a who's
yeah.
who and yeah, yeah.
And yeah, that didn't resonate, but I do feel like it moved the plot in certain directions, so I understand why that was done.
Yeah. And in my like suspension of disbelief with this story, I feel like all of that had been spent on Maria, because Maria knew she was going to be marrying into Alfonso's family. And like you said, when that was unexpected, it was kind of like, well, what can we do quickly? And so it really wasn't thought that Lucrezia was meant to have all this knowledge at this point. Um, which I thought was really interesting. And that actually bleeds well into my first question. Um, we kind of get this sense that Lucret's is a little different than the other kids, and very, very different from her mother. Um, do you think like her temperament and her intellect and willfulness was actually a benefit to her, or do you think it was a hindrance? Because she is a very willful child, even, with the tiger items and stuff. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? I think we opened up with the mother being like, I don't know where this one came from?
Well, obviously, I'm not going to spoil the book, but I will say that with how everything ended up, it was essential for her to be that person. And I do think that, I kind of related to her in a very weird way, considering she's in a completely foreign country, circumstance, and lifestyle and time period for me. But there were things and thoughts that she had that I could relate to. And I think part of that is that little bit of fire, like even when things are not
Excuse me.
going her way and clearly she's at a disadvantage, she really cannot control like that fire within her. She really just she can't hide who she is. And of course you don't know what you would do in a certain circumstance, because I think most people would play the game and be silent and go through the motions and just, not rock the boat.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I definitely connected to her character.
It was interesting because I think as a child, like you see the mother's frustration. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like she's like the odd
Yeah,
child out. But what I liked is when we were in her mind, you could see that she did seem to have a better intellectual understanding of certain things than it seems that the other kids did. Like she was very curious about the world and she was very curious like about the tiger and its meaning and she pondered these really, really big ideas. And for me, that was such a missed opportunity within this arc of the story because I got the impression that she would actually make a much better ruler than some of her siblings, and
yeah,
some other characters in the book. And but she's because the unfortunately, her status that she was born in, she was kind of reduced to this like pawn figure that's not supposed to think. So I really liked that it was included in the story that we could see in her mind all of these like really great ideas and this pondering and this very, very sharp way of thinking. But as for the plot, that's totally disregarded. And I think it's a very interesting dynamic and it kept me reading throughout the story.
you know, her painting is very interesting to me
Hmm.
because the mother does support that in a sense, right?
Hmm.
Um, and kind of helps to foster that creativity and that artistic um, part of her. But even within that, like when she starts doing the little miniature paintings,
Hmm.
she'll do one underneath that's a little provocative or strange, and
Hmm.
then because she knows people can't handle it, she'll
Yeah.
paint something very, a bowl of fruit or something over it.
Yeah.
Um, and I thought that was kind of cool. It's almost like her little secret.
Yeah.
She
And
knows
it's
it's
like,
there. And it's
yeah,
almost like a reflection of her. Like those are the things,
exactly.
those are the pieces of her that she really can't reveal
Yeah.
because people would be horrified. And
And it's all,
why? There's
yeah.
no reason to. Like you said, like the things that make her the oddball would have made her a good ruler. I mean, of course, we're talking about somebody who's like 14, 15 at the
Yeah.
time, but
We're suspending our
we're
disbelief.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
we're imagining what she could be.
exactly. exactly. And I like that you said that it's almost like a reflection of herself. It's almost like she's seeing all this as satire. Like, this is what I could do, and have all these great ideas and these great underpaintings, if you will. But this is how things are and how they're supposed to be. And it's almost like she's a little bit like laughing at the whole system a little bit through those paintings. So I'm glad that you said that because I picked up on that too, that she's kind of using this as like a commentary on her own situation, which I thought that was pretty cool, pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So we're going to move on to Alfonso, who is also a very, very important part of the story. Um, did you trust, and Alfonso is the gentleman that Lucrezia is engaged to and then ultimately marries and goes to live with in his castle, I think. I don't know if it's a castle, maybe a villa or something. In my brain, she went off to a castle, but um, did you trust Alfonso's kindness to her? And what was your like first like impression of him? And what was like did you think of the dynamics of their relationship?
I was a little smitten with him.
Right? Like at the very beginning, I'm like, it could be worse, girl. It could be
Yeah. I
it
was
could
kind of
be way
like,
worse. For that
yeah.
time and place and your position, that could be worse.
Yeah, I was kind of digging him. He gives the gift of the painting. He kind of like
Mm,
sees something in her and like remembers things about her, which I thought was very thoughtful. Um, Obviously, there are some other things that come to light. However, you know, I'm not defending
no,
the way he was at
no.
all. However, I can understand it given his situation and how tenuous his hold on his territory is, and how it's
Mm,
all dependent upon an heir, and how he has all of these family issues. He's got a Protestant mother who's, causing him political problems. He's got, these sisters that,
that cause
one
other
is kind of,
problems, yeah.
yeah, going around and doing whatever, so I understand why he would be this way because throughout history it's very common. I mean, it seems like the pressure of power
Yeah.
and trying to hold on to it can drive men to madness. And if they have something in their psyche that's just a little bit not right, I feel like all of those things kind of push it over the
Yeah.
edge. And
Yeah.
then, you combine that with these advisors. And in this one, we have a very close advisor
Yeah.
who plays a big role in
Leonello.
what happens. And yeah, I think his role in it is um, not to be discounted.
Yeah. I think I was honestly surprised because when you do see like the magnitude of what Alfonso is up against, like you're right, has the Protestant mother at the time that's causing, problems for him politically. He has these two sisters, like he has this pressure to make an heir and like everything's depending on him. I was actually quite surprised of how nice he was to her right off the bat. Like, you know what I mean? Like all of those things and yet he treats her very well at the beginning, which I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, like and let's face it, like he didn't have to. With a man in his position, with his political alliance, and like he could have treated her really any way, unfortunately, that he deemed fit. But it seemed that at least at first, he had a lot of respect for her and her role within his circle. So I thought that was kind of interesting where I'm like, here's a man that literally could pop off at any time, but he is making the conscientious effort to at least try to make her a little more comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought it was nice. Yeah, it's good. Um, were you surprised at his like how he rules versus how he treats her? Like, did that surprise you at the first time, or were you like, yeah, that makes sense?
Um, I'm
We
not
kind
going
of
to
delved
say it
into this
was a
earlier.
surprise. I think, it was a surprise to me how nice he was. I think that was the surprise.
Yeah,
Not just I'm kind of I'm going into this kind of expecting him to be a bit of
rough.
a bastard. And, you know, when he's not and he's doing these nice things, you know, I was sending you messages like, "Oh man, like I like this guy." Like, you know, I'm kind of crushing on him. Like he seems to have, you know, something a swagger about him, and
Mhm.
he is being very attentive to her. Um and you know, he had his secrets, but that wasn't unusual. Like, I know she kept going back to her parents' marriage and how her dad would always tell her mom, but that's not typical.
Yeah, that's the impression I got too, that like her parents' marriage was very different for the time.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? They truly were seemed to be like equals and have that
yeah,
like that dynamic. Whereas that's not gonna happen to her. You know what I mean? Like she's in a totally different boat. Um, but something that I kind of thought is like I pictured that Alfonso would have been the man he is to Lucrezia if all the time if he didn't have all this political stress. You know what I mean? Like to me
yeah,
the political stress was almost like the act versus like he's probably actually a very very gentle soul. Maybe. I mean we can debate that towards the end, okay? Um but like it almost seems to me like the kindness and the gentleness would have been what he was truly without the political pressures. See what I
yeah,
mean? Which I thought
yeah.
was really really nice. Yeah. Yeah. Um, so it's funny, we actually did already talk about the parents' marriage. That was on my list as well. What were your impressions of the sisters, Elisabetta and Nunziata? Like, um, and did your first impression kind of change as the story went on, or like what was your like thought about how they treated her and how their characterization grew?
Well, that was interesting because I could see both of those sisters' reactions being very real. You know, on the one hand, you have the sister who she has her secrets to keep and she wants to make sure that this new sister in law is on her side. So she is just as sweet as sugar, honey. And she is going to that girl's bedroom and taking her out on walks
Braiding
and,
her
you
hair
know,
and yeah,
yeah, braiding her hair and, you know, girl stuff, right? She's making this effort, and you know, she sees a potential ally. She sees someone who can help her kind of smooth her brother's feathers, you know, if she ever ruffles them, which we know she does. And yeah, so I totally see that side of it. And then the other one, Nuncia,
mhm,
I forget her name, but
Nunziata.
she I can totally see her reaction as well. You know, she sees her brother, I guess, for kind of the political ruthless actor that he is, and she's looking at this new wife as more of an adversary and someone who needs to be watched on behalf of the family. And um, yeah, I can totally see both sides to that. So I thought it was kind of interesting that she did that with those two characters. It made it interesting.
Yeah, I think with both of the characters, they were well aware of how precarious their predicament was
Hmm.
politically. Like
Yep.
they can't do anything to help, the brother's situation there or like his they can't carry on like the family name themselves, because they would marry into another family. Their heirs would not be, thought of in this lineage or in the same way that his would. So, in a lot of ways, they're very, very powerless to kind of help their own family situations. So, in that way, I think they kind of idolize Lucrezia a little bit. Like, you're our only hope, you know what I mean? And that's how they
Yeah.
zoom in. And so, I thought that was kind of interesting too that both of them do. I think both of them are very aware of that and they have very different ways of carrying that out. Like Elisabetta is very like flowery and happy and like make sure she's comfortable, kind of like the side that Alfonso that we see initially. But then Nunciata is a little bit more like strict, like, no, this is business. You know what I mean? And you need to have an heir. And you need to do this, this, and this. And we have to like get this moving politically, which is the other side of Alfonso. So I think that was kind of interesting that it's almost a personification of his two, right? Yeah,
Oh,
of his two like
yeah.
personalities within the story, but it's literally like another way of interaction for Lucrezia. So I thought that was kind of cool. I thought that was really clever.
Yeah, that's really neat. Yeah, I didn't think about that. That's cool.
And then obviously when certain things happen with Elisabetta and she has this meltdown and she's kind of broken by this, that kind of, to me, reflected like his final decision. You know what I mean? Like you can be as nice as you want, you can be as sweet as you want, you can be as loving, but when things get rough politically, none of that's going to matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In within the story. And I think I love that scene when she's crying in her bed after certain things happen and she's like, "Who do you think's going to be blamed? It's going to be you." And it's like that stark realness, and in my mind, that's almost happening at the same time in his psyche too. So I thought that was really cool. I love that scene. I thought that was brilliantly done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was cool. Um, what did you think of Leonello's attitude towards Lucrezia? And do you think that Lucrezia would have a similar dynamic with Emilia than um, uh, Alfonso and Leonello had had?
Hmm. What do you think?
So I have a thought. Um, I was very I mean, we've talked about how they know that Lucrezia's like their only hope, like all of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if he's not a ruler, none of the advisors are going to be, advising anymore. None of the sisters are going to be, have their statue. Like it's all on Lucrezia. And I was so surprised at the beginning when Leonello's a little bit like sarcastic with her, or there was some type of undertone of aggression there, like a little passive aggressive. I don't know what you call it, but it it was not as warm and welcoming as I would have thought. And so I thought that was kind of interesting because he's the same way. Like i- if Alfonso's not ruling and he doesn't have an heir, like Leonidas could be out of a job too. You know what I mean? And so I
Yeah.
thought it was really interesting that he had that type of tone with her at the front. And I have a couple of thoughts, but I'm not sure how well they pan out. So
I think he has to be that way though. Because
how?
think about it. He has to be a bit um cavalier about messing with these people's lives because at the end of the day, I think he is really the one who is making the decisions that
Yeah,
people need to be taken out.
yeah, yeah,
Like I think he is, you know, because we've said like Alfonso, like he's got some redeeming qualities and he can be sweet and he can have these things. And I do think that he is conflicted about them. Like I do
yes,
think there are glimpses of that, when Lucrezia is asking him about certain things that are going on. Like I think it's clear that there's some conflict there.
yes.
Um, but with, is it Leonello? Is that how you pronounce it?
Leonello, yeah.
Yeah, but with
Which I love
Leonello,
that name. That's such a cool name, by the way.
I don't think there is that same conflict. Like I think this is what it is, and yeah, he's just going to treat people however helps him to get through it and make the tough decisions and move the players around. I think he's all strategy and no heart.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
Alfonso, I think he has to be strategic and he has to do these hard things, and he has people around him telling him that he has to be this way. But I think he does have a heart.
really?
Yes.
Leonello has a heart?
No, no.
Oh, Alfonso. Yeah,
Alfonso.
Alfonso.
I
Okay,
think
that's what I was
Leonello
just like,
has no
really?
heart.
Okay, yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah,
what
I
I
think
thought
he's
too. But I was
he's
like, wait a
all
minute.
no, he's all strategy, and
Yeah,
so it doesn't shock me how he treats anyone, um,
yeah.
because they're just a cog. They're not anything.
Hmm. So, how do you think, like, obviously Leonello is fiercely loyal to Alfonso, fiercely, like he would do anything like for him, as we see in the final scene. But do you think the same of Amelia and Lucrezia? Because Amelia's really the only one Lucrezia has in her corner. You know what I mean? Even the sisters you can't really trust. You know what I mean? Because they are Alfonso's siblings. You know, they have political thoughts of their own and their own situations. So to me, like Amelia's the only like person that doesn't have anything to gain from
Yeah.
Lucrezia. Like no matter what, like she's gonna be, um,
Her station
I don't
doesn't
know.
change.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. She well, and two, they have a bit of a different background because they are quote milk sisters, right?
Mm,
So
that's right. I
her
forgot that.
mother actually nursed Lucretia, and so they kind of grew up together. Like I know later she gets taken away from that place, but Lucretia loved her mom and cried and was hysterical when she had to leave her. I think in a lot of situations, a maid servant would be, they might get along with their mistress and, what, but they don't really have true affection and like a history,
Mm,
a shared history,
mm,
because they're obviously from two completely separate stations. But here it's a little bit different dynamic because they do, even though they are, in different statuses, they do have that shared history. They do have that
mm.
shared childhood.
Yeah. It's funny. I feel bad for Amelia at the end because I don't think she would have like went for the final situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas I'm not sure if Leonello would for Alfonso if the roles were reversed. You know what I mean? Like to me, it seems like Leonello is so devoted to his job and to Alfonso and their position. Like I feel like he would have like done what happened to
You
Amelia like
think
voluntarily. Maybe
you
I don't
think he'd
know.
lay I don't think he'd
I
lay
don't
down his
know.
life.
I don't
Mm-mm.
know. That's the thing. But I don't. That's a tough one now that I think about it. Now I think you're right. Actually, I think
Yeah.
actually that's what makes the situation sadder because I think that being in her position, Amelia is kind of disposable in a way.
Hmm.
But I do think she would have if she had the choice to save Lucrezia. But meanwhile, Leonello, who's have a higher position, he's more like important, if you will, within the story. He wouldn't, which I think that makes it even sadder for Amelia. What do you think?
We'll see. I want to say limoncello. I don't know why. What's
I
his
know.
name?
I know. I know. I know. We'll call him Michelle. It'll be fine.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Leonello.
Leonello. I don't know why I keep wanting to
That's
say
okay.
limoncello. I
I'm
gotta
probably
stop
not
myself.
even saying it correctly either. So this is like probably not even. It's so
um,
bad. People are probably shaking their heads, being like these two.
I know. Like these two have no business talking about this book. So limoncello. He's like he's like a cockroach. Like, I don't care what happens, he's going to
Mm,
survive. He will scurry to the next little power base and he will latch on there and he will pretend that he has this, ultimate devotion to this person. Like I don't think it's specific to his, Alfonso. Like I think you know, he wants us to believe it is. And of course, he is very ardent in his support and the things he is willing to do to further Alfonso's cause. But again, I think he sees people as pawns. So you swap someone else with Alfonso, and he's going with that horse. He's going to back the horse that he thinks is going to win, period.
mm.
Period.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Amelia, yeah, I think you are right that I don't think she would have when you first said I don't think she would have gone with the scenario.
Yeah.
Knowing what we know now, how it ends up, I think you're right. I don't think she wanted to I don't think she had
No.
any sort of it's hard for me not to spoil what's happening
You know
here.
what? We're gonna just spoil warning. If you don't want to be
Okay.
spoiled from it from here on out, thank you so much for viewing. We appreciate it. Come check us out again after you finish the book. But we are going into spoiler territory at this moment. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Okay,
Jane, because
Carrie.
it was
You're
killing me.
welcome. All right,
Okay.
spoilers.
So I don't think she would have wanted to die. I don't think she was a miserable person. Um, and I don't think she had any sort of death wish. I think she would have helped Lucretia escape
Yeah.
100%, but I don't think she would have, voluntarily laid down her life. And I don't know that Lucretia, she, I mean, she has an idea of what's going to happen, but she can't predict that she's going to die,
Yeah.
and I hate to be so callous, but I just know that for the great majority of people, self preservation kicks in, and it
Yeah.
is just human instinct. And I don't think, she wanted, you know, Amelia to die, um, or anything like that. But, she was just trying to survive herself. And she's a
Yeah.
kid. I mean, I
Yeah.
think
That's true.
that
They're
that
both,
is
yeah, they're both,
they're
if they're
both
growing
kids.
up, they're
Yeah.
both young. Yeah. 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 But I think that's what makes it so much sadder too, because she was just kind of in the
Yeah.
wrong, literally the wrong
In the
place at the
wrong
wrong
place.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so that is all like my set questions that I have. Is there anything that like you wanted to discuss within the story, Carrie?
Oh, we haven't talked about the apprentice.
The painters.
Yeah.
Oh, they were so sweet. I liked them so
That
much.
was sweet.
That was good. That was really good. I love the opening. I love their opening like introductory scene where they don't know it's her, and so they're just
Yeah.
like totally at ease, and they're so lucky that she is super cool
Yeah.
because that could have been gone so badly so quick for them.
That
But I
definitely could have
love
been as
that.
bad.
Yeah, I
That
love
was
that.
cool.
Yeah, and I think what did you think about like I forget his name to be honest.
Me too.
Um,
It's been a while since we read
yeah,
this, to be honest.
yeah. It, honestly, it kind of has. Like we're lucky we're getting to it at this point. Um, I forget his name, but what did you think of the painter who I believe he was mute? No, or
He
forget his
did
name.
not talk in front of certain people.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right.
We
Again,
found
it's
that
been a
out
while.
later. We think he's mute. We do think he's mute. But we find out obviously he talks to Lucretia, and he
That's right.
chooses to be mute. And I can understand that. And
Yeah.
that really works to his advantage in so many ways because, you know, he's kind of seen as not even there,
Mm,
so you can hear things and you can pick up on things that other people don't.
right. Because
Because they,
people
they
like
think he can't tell, he
yeah.
can't speak, so we can speak freely.
Oh, that's true. That's true. I didn't even think about that.
Hmm.
Wow. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
smart. What did you think of like his relationship with Lucretia though? Like
It was simmering with just tension, was it
I
not?
know, right?
I
But I
loved the painting scenes,
it
like when
seemed a
they're
little
looking at each other, and I don't know. We're
yeah.
of course getting it from her side.
Yeah. And she's like a very like a little bit sometimes fantastical and like
Yeah,
romantically
very
inclined person.
cerebral in her
Yeah.
head, and yeah,
Yeah. Um, I have to say I wasn't so sure about it. I feel like it was a little insta love
yeah,
like yeah, and I don't do well with that personally. You know, I like a little bit more build up, a little more interaction. Because it did seem a little bit like, okay, well this is your situation now. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
yeah, and which is funny because then I didn't question it with Alfonso, but now I question it with the painter, which I'm like, I'm not
yeah,
sure how that works. But I think with Alfonso, like there didn't have to be like a build up. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're already in the situation. But versus like the painter, like I don't know, I've wanted a little bit more build up, maybe a little more interaction, a little more like get to know her as a person before you try to save her type of thing. I don't know. That's me.
Well, let me defend the insta love in this scenario. Hear me out.
Okay.
She saved his life and she knew what to
Fair
do.
enough. Yeah, fair
He was
enough.
having a diabetic coma incident
Mhm.
and she acted very quickly and with compassion and with
Mm.
no regard for how it looked. Because think about that. There's a strange
Mm.
man and she literally has his hand like head in her hands and she like that's like whoa, like
Improper
that's very
at the
improper.
time.
And so they have had a very intimate moment literally on the brink of death. So just think about
Yeah.
that. And then
Yeah.
two, consider the times. Like I feel like those were the times of insta love. It's like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, so and so looked at me in church. Oh my gosh, I'm in love. We must get married. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
I
this
feel
is the
like they didn't
time
live
of
very long back then, so they didn't really have a lot of time to
you
waste,
gotta
you
act
know?
fast, Jane. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. Yeah.
So I
So,
usually do not like insta love, but given the time period and the circumstances with their meeting, I was cool with it.
yeah. And
I
that
did
is the
feel like it was reciprocated. I know we were just getting
yeah.
it from her side, but like how they were saying things without saying anything
It's
and
almost like telepathic, which I'm like,
yeah, it was great.
that is a very like intimate thing because I would suspect like with all excuse me, with all the rules of court at the time, um you can't have a lot of interaction with gentlemen who are not your husband.
Right.
You know what I mean? Um, or like if you're single, like gentlemen, period. Um, but to sit there and like literally be soaked in from somebody else who needs to like know every single detail of like your features and your shape and all that. Now I can see like okay, that is simmering. You know what I mean? That is probably an
Yeah.
intimacy that she wouldn't have with a lot of people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't think about that till you said it, but now it makes sense.
It's been a while. It's been a while since we read it, so
That's true.
it's coming back. The memories are coming back.
Mhm. So, anything else that we should discuss, Carrie?
Um, I don't know. I think that's about all I can remember.
Did you like the fictionalized ending?
Yes.
Me too. I have to say, it made me sad though. It like broke my heart a little bit.
Which part?
Well, just this whole thing where, she's stepping out into this whole other life. You know what I mean? And just looking back to see, like, Amelia paid the ultimate price. Okay. That was supposed to be Lucrezia. Let's be honest. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And to think about this young girl having gone through all of these like strange situations and all of this new stuff and having this pressure and having these expectations on her at such a young age and through no fault of her own or at the time it probably was but through no fault of her own was seen as being disposable at the time. That broke my heart. It did. I cried a little bit because, knowing that it was supposed to be her because of something that was out of her control and politically was not her fault or anything like that, just all of these external things. And yet she meets that fate because of it. I cried for the rest of the night. I did. I had such an emotional reaction to this story. It was so sad for me.
We have to stop reading sad books,
You
Jane.
know, we really do. We gotta pick something else.
I need something upbeat, guys. Give us some
I know.
recommendations.
I know. We gotta.
I don't know. I just don't go for upbeat. I don't know.
No, neither do I. No, of course not. Yeah, all of our books have
No.
been pretty sad. I mean, we read A Little Life. We
Little
read
life.
Come Closer, which had a sad ending. Yeah, we gotta liven this up a little bit, Carrie. So, final thoughts, Carrie. Would you recommend this book or not?
Absolutely. It's so well written. Um, really character driven plot, and you know, just very unexpected. I loved it.
I did too. I did too. And I'm so glad that I got to read it with you and we got to talk about like the history and the political atmosphere. I thought that was a very, very interesting book. It's something that I don't think I would have considered on my own without hearing about this novel.
Nice.
And I felt like I learned something while also excuse me, while also being very, very entertained. And to me, it did read more like a thriller,
Yeah.
which I thought
Yep.
was a really, really great way to present this book. Because I do think that some of it could have been like really dry. You know what I mean? Like if it wasn't written
True.
this way, I don't think we would have kept reading at some parts. Um, but the writing style, along with the characterization and just it really was like an action-driven thriller type plot, made this book so interesting for me, and I'm so glad that I read it. I would recommend it.
You heard it here, guys. Read it.
Absolutely. And with that, I think we will wrap it up for the night. Thank you so much, Carrie. It's always so great to see you. I always enjoy our discussions, and thank you for always reading books with me.
Of course, it's my pleasure. You're my booktube bestie, and always enjoy our time together. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. We'll have to pick our next book at some point. We'll do that off screen. The
Yes.
first time we'll ever pick our book off screen, but we will pick something, and we will be back soon. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope you had a wonderful time with this discussion, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.